One, um, welcome to Depth Foundation Live today. Thank you for joining us in today's class. Thank you for joining us in today's class. My name is Abuchi Okaro. I'm the founder of Depth Foundation, a non-religious organization that teaches the Bible as a map of inner transformation. By that, we mean that the teachings of the Bible are not teachings about historical figures that lived some thousands of years ago and their way of life. Rather, they are the psychological drama that is taking place in your consciousness, because everything is consciousness. Okay? It also means that the characters and all the actors in the Bible are simply the personifications of your consciousness and its different attributes. Okay, this is what we teach at the Depth Foundation. Okay, we hold our class every Sunday, today, 9 a.m. So apologies for starting 28 minutes late. We had some technical issues we're trying to resolve. Thankfully, we have been able to do that. So we are here now. Thank you for joining. Please share this video. Let it reach anybody that may need it. Okay? Share it, like. If you have questions, drop it in the comment section and we will answer you. Okay? So, our today's topic is there is only God. There is only God. Therefore, man is God. Let me repeat. Our today's topic is there is only God. There is only God. And man is God. There is only God, and man is God. I know that in the Christendom, okay, we have been taught to believe that man is not God and God is separate from man. We have been taught to believe that in the Christendom. So we're taught that God is an entity that is in the sky, outside of man in the sky, outward and upward. But if you examine the Bible critically, if you look for decoded teachings of the Bible, which is esoteric, other than, viewing the book, in fact, the greatest book that's ever been written, other than viewing it from exoteric point of view, you would realize that the teachings contained in the book speaks to an internal God in every man walking the surface of the earth. Okay, it's all over. It's littered in the Bible. So that is what has informed this topic today. To bring man back to the original deeper meanings of the Bible teachings, which is esoteric. So a drama or event taking place in your consciousness as we speak, because everything is consciousness. And consciousness is simply what was defined or represented in the Bible as God. So if you're a Christian listening to me here, this teaching is important for you, because the God of your Bible is simply your consciousness. The King of Kings in your Bible is simply referring to your consciousness. The Lord of Lords is referring to your consciousness. The I am that I am, the all of the names, God, Lord, King, all of the names that was described as God in the Bible is your consciousness. And consciousness is the one and only reality. Okay? Is the one and only reality. And that's what we want to explain today with this teaching. There is only God, because consciousness is the one and only reality, and man is God. If there's only God, it equally means that man is God. Okay? So to now understand why we said there is only, because at the end of this class today, you're going to understand how you came into this world yourself. You're going to understand what consciousness or what God really is. You're then going to understand what this skin bag called man is. And then, most importantly, you will understand how you can take charge of your own life without the aid of any man, without the aid of any prophetess, any GU, general overseer, any prophet, any spiritual director, and all of those things. You will understand that you have the power as God that you are to shape and create, any expression you want to experience in this world, any form you want to experience in this world. You have the power to do that. Okay? So that's basically what will be the takeaway for you in this lecture today, in this teaching today. Okay? So let's jump into it. Let's go at it. Okay? And why do we say God is everything? There's only God and man is God. So what we mean by that, or what I mean by that, is that everything you see yourself, okay, and all things that you see around you, okay, are God. Okay? How are they God? Because they have the same essence as God. Even though they are in different forms, different shapes, just like we human beings, we're in different forms and different shapes scattered everywhere, okay? We still have the same essence as God. It means, what I mean by we have the same essence is that God is the one who has taken those different forms. The form of me, the form of you, the form of this phone that we're using, the form of this mic, the form of the animals, the form of the trees, the form of the stones, the form of feeling, the form of thoughts, okay? All forms, both tangible and intangible, okay, are from the same essence. So if all things come from the same essence, are made up of the same essence, are of the same essence, okay, which was clearly stated in the Bible. Okay, if you go to John. If you go to John 1:3, it says, through him all things were made. All things. Remember, I said all when I said all things. So through him, let's read it. John 1:3. Okay. It says, through him all things were made. Without him, nothing was made that has been made. Okay, through him all things were what? Were made. And without him, there is nothing that has been made. There is not, without him, nothing was made that has been made. Okay, so who is this him? It is consciousness. Okay, what the Bible represented as God and all other names that was given in the Bible. Okay, let's read other verses that also speak to what we are talking about. If you go to Genesis 1:27, it says, God created man in his own image. Now, when Bible is referring to man, Bible is referring to the expression form. It's generic. It's not like just the male figure. Man is everything in expression, all matter, basically. You can put it as all matter. Okay, so it includes me, it includes the women, it includes the children, it includes the animals, it includes the trees, it includes the stones, it includes everything. Okay, so Genesis 1:27, it says, God created man in his own image. Okay, in his own what? Image. Okay, and so that speaks to it. Okay, another Bible verse that sort of describes it very well is if you go to Acts 17:28. What it says is, in him we live and move and have our being. Okay, in him we live and move and have our being, blah blah blah, for we are all his offspring. So you see, when I tell you that there is only God, I am letting you know that the essence, okay, that all things are made up of the essence. All things are the different form the essence have taken. Okay, and that essence is consciousness. Okay, so what it means is that, and if the essence basically took those different forms, it means those forms, those expressions themselves are the essence. You cannot separate the expression from the essence, basically. So that's why all things are made through this essence. Okay, and according to Genesis 1:27, it is this same essence that what made man in his image. Now that image is speaking to that essence taking the form of man. Okay, now what should be clear to you at the end of this lesson as well is that you will now know what consciousness is, which I have said is God now, then what man is, and what was that phenomenon that helped consciousness to take the man form. And man, as you now know, is generic. It could be stone, it could be tree, it could be human being, it could be male human being, it could be female human being, it is animal as well. Okay, so all things. Remember, in that John 1:3 that we read, he said, through him all things, all, both good, bad, indifferent, all things. He didn't exempt anything. He says all things. So the stone the tree, the animal, the human being, the thoughts, the feelings, all things, okay, originate from consciousness, which is what the Bible represented as God, Lord, King of Kings, Ancient of Days, etc., etc. Okay? So now let's drill in, okay? How did we now came into this being, okay? How we came into this being, okay? And even before I say that, part of, if you also go to the scriptures in John 10:30, okay, what does it say? It says, I and my Father are one. So what that simply means, my Father still represents consciousness, so it's Lord. So whatever is that, what was represented in the Bible as God, like my Father, my Lord, is speaking to consciousness, is what consciousness is, okay? So he said, I and my Father are one, okay? So now, for somebody, or for you, for example, to say, I and my Father are one, it means in reality, even though things are one, it means there is two things there, okay? So that's why I told you that the essence or consciousness took all the different forms, man, animal, trees, stones, okay, took all of those different forms, okay, but all of those different forms are still the essence, because there's no separation, they are one, okay. And that's why if you go to John 10:30, it says, I and my Father are one. So what that simply means, man is the expression of the same being, stone is the expression of the same essence, man is the expression of the same essence, tree is the expression of the same essence, animals are the expression of what? The same essence. So these things are clearly written in the Bible. But the reason why most people, especially people in the Christendom, do not understand all of these things, as I'm explaining it now, is because they have continued to treat the teachings of the Bible as something external to them. Okay, so the central jet of truth of the Bible is basically the creator world, which is consciousness, as you now know. Okay, by the way, I'll show you why it is consciousness. So the central jet of truth is God, which is consciousness, basically. The problem with the Christendom is that they treat that consciousness as something external to man, something separate from man, even when the Bible clearly stated that it is not separate from man. Okay, for example, if you go to Luke 17:21, it says, the kingdom of God is within you. Anything that is inside of you is not separate from you. So, for example, your heart is inside of you. Can you say your heart is separate from you? So if the kingdom of God is within you and God, King, lives in his kingdom, it means God is within you. So all of these teachings are pointing to the fact that God is in you, and therefore it is you who is God. And, I didn't make this claim myself. If you go to, for example, you go to Psalms 82:6. Psalms 82:6. What does it say? It says, I said, you are gods. You are all sons of the Most High. Listen to the two things here. You are gods. Then you are all sons of the Most High. Okay? He first of all say you are God. So he recognized two things here. He recognized your essence, which is your true nature. Then recognize your polarity, which is the individual, the individual essence with different forms scattered everywhere. Okay, so he's just telling you what this is speaking to is the same thing we read in John. Is it John 10:30? Yeah, John 10:30. I and my Father are one. That's what Psalm 82:6 is saying. It's saying you are gods. First of all, it was direct. You are gods. Then the next thing that followed is sons of. Okay, so what is simply saying here is the Son and the Father are one. Okay, and that's what I've explained. Okay. The Son and Father are one in the sense that the essence and the expression are one and the same. Okay, so it means consciousness expressing through me, through you, through Beth. All of us are still the same consciousness. You think of it as, the ocean and its wave. Okay, you can't separate the ocean from the waves. That's the same thing. You can't separate man from God. They are one and the same, according to John 10:30. But why did we say consciousness is God? Okay, so remember, I want to show why, I've really explained it, but I want to draw it again from the Bible, because the work of Death Foundation that I founded, okay, is to bring people back to the original teachings of the Bible, which is the book that teaches us about consciousness, which is our true self and all its different attributes. Okay? And consciousness is the only thing that exists, is the one and only reality. Every other thing is an illusion. I am an illusion. All the expressions of consciousness are illusions. That's why you see it, the very nature of those expressions, those forms, are ephemera. They're always fleeting. You understand? So the problem with the Christendom teaching, the mainstream Christendom teaching, is that they focus their teaching. They think that the teachings of the Bible are focused on the expression that the essence, consciousness have taken. That's not what it is. The teachings are focused on consciousness itself and its different attributes. Of course, part of the attributes includes the form, the expression it has taken. But the mainstream Christendom teaching just focuses on that expression, even though they also reference the consciousness, but they reference it as a spiritual world that is greater than man. And that spiritual world is simply consciousness. And that's the only thing that exists. And it's not greater than man. God, that's why John 10:30 says, I and my Father are the same, are one. So if two things are one, it means none is greater. The only thing that has happened here is that consciousness took the expression that you call man, or stone, or animal, or tree, or even thoughts or feelings. It's everything. It's all things, according to the Bible. Okay? So let me just draw for the last time how consciousness is God, okay? And we will take it from Exodus, where his name, or the name, was clearly stated. So I will try to keep this lecture this class as short as possible, because the feedback I am getting is that my class is always too long. Okay, so I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Let's go to Exodus 3:14. Let's see what his name is. Let's see what consciousness really is, or how consciousness is the God of the Bible. Exodus 3:14. So this is the Bible verse that God revealed his name to Moses. Okay. By the way, Moses, let me just quickly say this. Moses, again, like what I said, the teachings of the Bible are the, psychological drama that's taking place in your consciousness. And the characters as well are not figures, individuals that lived in time and space, just like we're living today. Okay. Rather, they are the personifications of your consciousness and its different attributes. So those characters are fictional characters that were used to convey a certain psychological truth, okay, of your consciousness, basically. So the reason I'm pointing that out is that Moses was never a figure that lived in time and space. How do I know this? When I, get into argument with, the so-called, with respect, the Christians, okay, who challenge my teaching, okay. So anytime we get to it, part of the argument that gets us to, Moses, I always, when I tell them Moses wasn't a man that lived in time and space. They argue seriously about it, and then I will ask them, who wrote the book of Leviticus? And they will say Moses. I'll now ask them, if Moses wrote the book of, there were other books according to them that Moses wrote, and that includes the book of Leviticus. Then I'll ask, if Moses, wrote the book of Leviticus, is it possible for you, to write about your obituary? Because the book of Leviticus also holds the account of the obituary of Moses. So how can somebody who has died now write about his death and how he was buried somewhere that no man knows? And, the thing about teaching the Bible from the perspective of exoterism, external, surface level, okay, is that it breeds a lot of confusion and contradiction in principles, okay. So they get confused, they try to explain it away. But one interesting one that somebody has explained that really, that was so funny to me was, after he had claimed it was Moses that wrote the book of Leviticus. So when I now brought up this knowledge to him, okay, do you know what his defense was? The thing they have found is that, it wasn't only Moses that wrote all of those books. He had to write it with some people. Then he now said he wrote it. He now included Joshua as, part of the people that wrote that book of Leviticus. So it wasn't only Moses. So obviously what he was trying to his defense, after he had agreed it was only Moses, because he didn't know where I was going to. Okay, so when I now pushed, that it's impossible for somebody to write about his own death, okay, then he now had to include Joshua in the picture to now say Joshua wrote that book. Wrote, so it was Joshua. So his argument was that Moses wrote up to a certain level and then Joshua now completed it. So obviously that's the way they now explain, how Moses didn't write about his own death, okay? Even if they had agreed, it was Moses that wrote the entire book, okay? So this is one thing. But the reason I want to say this is because in explaining consciousness, where we know that consciousness is God, is in Exodus 3:14, in explaining that it was because Moses asked God what was his name, and God had told him point blank, my name is I am, okay? So it was because we talked about Moses that's why I'm bringing up this story. So now, what is, if Moses is not somebody that lived in time and space, what is Moses then? Okay, Moses is a figure, a character in the Bible that represents germinating Christ. Germinating Christ. A Christ germinating. So he's not a full-fledged Christ. He's a germinating Christ. Okay? And a germinating Christ was buried, according to the Bible. Moses was buried where, nobody knows. Okay? I think the Bible also referenced it at Golgotha. Where's Golgotha? Golgotha is a region of your brain. Okay? is a region of your brain. That is where Christ was buried. Christ was crucified in you. Christ himself is not a figure that lived in time and space, just like you and I are living. He's also a fictional character. Okay? He's a fictional character. Okay? So Moses was germinating Christ. Okay? Germinating what? Christ. So when you have begun to awaken, that awakening period, that's what Moses of the Bible represents. That's the character Moses in the Bible. Okay, now how do we know this? He was buried in Golgotha. Golgotha is a region of your brain where if it activates, you would achieve enlightenment. And enlightenment is Christ, is the peak of enlightenment. Enlightenment is Christ. Okay? So enlightenment is Christ. Okay, the guys on Facebook, I just noticed you've been, the life ended there. I don't know why this keep happening on this phone. So I'm coming up back. Bear with me. So it will have part 2, part 1. But YouTube is always very good for live. So now, who took over from Moses? Moses did not see the promised land because he was germinating. He's a character that represents that developing when you are, already on the path and working yourself up to consciousness. So now that's why he did not see the promised land, which is that point of consciousness. He didn't see it, the land that flows with milk and honey. Okay, he only heard about it. He only told him what it was like. Okay, now who saw it? Who now eventually took the children of Israel into that promised land? It was Joshua. Okay, Joshua of your Bible is Jehoshua. Okay, Jehoshua. Okay, that Jehoshua, that's Jesus. Joshua in the Old Testament is Jesus, Jehoshua. Okay, that Joshua is the Anglicanized. So Jehoshua, okay, is Jesus, is the Anglicanized form of. So Jesus is the Anglicanized form of Jehoshua. He was Jesus. So that's they represent that enlightenment. Okay, because he got to that point that got to the point that got to the promised land. Okay, that flows with milk and honey. Okay, so it was Jehoshua, and that name Jehoshua was made up of about 5 Hebrew characters, and each of those characters represents something. Okay, it represents something. Do you understand? So Joshua as well, which is Jehoshua, isn't also a character that lived in time and space. So this is a topic for another day, really. But the reason I'm drawing this out is to just buttress our point that those characters in the Bible are not people that lived in time and space, just like you and I are living. They were fictions. They were used to pass message across, okay? So, but we'll go to that details of, what happened, all of those, how those characters represent a certain point, aspect or attribute of your consciousness. So back to what we want to do now. So Exodus 3:14. Exodus 3:14. What does that say? It says, God said, excuse me, please. He said, God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you should tell the children of Israel. Okay? I am who I am. Okay? Let's go to the verse that says, that's my name forever. So that's on the 15th side, 3:15. What does Exodus 3:15 say? It says, say to the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. That's the name you shall call me from generation to generation. So that's I am. Okay. So now, I am, when you say I am, this is how I always explain it for easier understanding. When you say I am, you can only make reference to yourself. If you just say I am now, it cannot be any other person except you. I am is contemporary presence, you. When you say I am, you're referring to yourself. First person present tense. Okay? Now, I am indicates you. And that is the God of the Bible. And you are God. That's why Psalms 86:3 made it clear. You are God. You are the God of the Bible. Okay? That I am is your true self. Okay? I am simply means consciousness. When you say I am, you're saying you're conscious. That's consciousness. That's God. I am is consciousness. Unconditioned awareness. So awareness, but unconditioned awareness of being. So it's an awareness of being. Okay? You are aware. And this is where I always explain it to people. One of the philosophers said, let me get the name this time. He said, I think, therefore I exist. That's what one of the, and that's Rene Descartes, if I hope I pronounced it correctly. He says, I think, therefore I exist. Now, so what it means is I think, therefore I am. So I am aware. But he is conditioning existence, awareness on the fact that he thinks. That's a wrong way to describe awareness. The fact that you think is not the reason why you are aware. Rather, it's the opposite, it's the flip side of it. It's because you are aware. That's why you think. How? Have you ever asked yourself this question? Who observed my thoughts? How do I know that I think? Your thought, your feelings, your emotions. How am I aware of it? It's because of that unconditioned awareness of being, which is your true self, which is the God of the Bible, which is the King of Kings in the Bible, which is the Lord of Lords, which is whatever name it was represented within the Bible. You don't exist because you think. It's because you are aware. And awareness is the observer, observing those thoughts and feelings. That observer is consciousness, is pure awareness, pure consciousness. That's what was referred to in Exodus 3:15. That's what was referred to there. The observer. Okay, now if you now go to John 10:30, the observer and the observed are one. That's the essence of this whole topic today. There is only God. Man is God. Okay? So, I am, which was told to Moses, that's the name. That I am is your own consciousness. Observing. So how you know the consciousness is how you know that you think and feel. Because the reason why you know you think and feel is because there is an observer observing those thoughts and feeling. And that observer and that thoughts and feeling is the same essence with the observer. So that's what consciousness of the Bible means. That's what God of the Bible means. So, but how do we now came in this expressed form? Okay, this man form. It is still the observer or the father or pure consciousness in action. Okay, whenever it moves, creation happens. How do we know that? If you go to Genesis 1:2, what does it say? It says, in the beginning, Genesis, now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovering over the waters. So hovering is a movement, is motion. King James Version translated as, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the water. Now, this movement is the difference between expression, man, which is woman, which is animal, which is stone, which is tree, which is all matter. Okay? This movement, whenever there is this movement, it usually gives birth to expression. So what does that mean? That simply means that consciousness, the unconditioned awareness of being, moved and took the form of what? Of man, of me, of you, of tree, of stone, of woman, of animals. That's what you find in Genesis 1:27. It says, God created man in his own image. Now, that brings me, in his own image, now brings us to, what was the phenomenon that helped, when that movement happened, what phenomenon helped consciousness into taking the form of expression, which is me, which is you, which is the tree, which is the stone, which is the animal? Is imagination. It is imagination. That imagination is what the Bible represented as Jesus of Nazareth. So it is through imagination that this scheme bag expression came into being. The imagination of what? The imagination of consciousness. I am. So me, for example, I am Abuchi. You, for example, you are Punam. You are Fatima. Karashi. You are Putra. You are this. You are that. Therefore, in Exodus 3:15 or 3:14, I am. Then that I am. I am. That I am is his name. That's the Jehovah of the Bible. It's also indicating you cannot separate consciousness from expression, because consciousness took the form of expression through imagination. And that imagination is the Son of God, the Son of consciousness. Because it came forth from consciousness. And his work in coming forth from consciousness, his job role in coming forth from consciousness, is so that through it, consciousness can take form. And become this expression called Abuchi. And all other human beings, stone, tree, animal, on the surface, all matter on the surface of this world of form. So how? There is I am, consciousness. But at the level of I am, consciousness hasn't become anything. It hasn't taken any condition state. It hasn't taken any state. It's just pure consciousness. It's just I am, awareness of being. It's just aware. So what, in order to now become something, he had to, through, he imagined Abuchi and became me. Imagine stone and became stone. Imagine tree and became tree. Imagined animal and became animal. So imagination is the wisdom and power of God, according to Paul. Who is the wisdom and power of God? Who was Paul referring to as the wisdom and power of God? Let's see who he referred to, because I had mentioned it here, but let's just look at it. First Corinthians 1:24. But to whom God has called, both Jews and the Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. So Christ wasn't a man that lived in time and space just like we're living. It is a power of God and the wisdom of God. And Christ is your wonderful human imagination. Something I also like to call your vivid human imagination. The faculty that helps you go into the unseen to bring forth the seen. That's the Christ of the Bible. It is your imagination that was represented or personified in the Bible as Christ, because it is through this imagination that I am, the awareness of being, took the conditioned state, expression now called Abuchi, now called the tree, now called the animals, now called the stone. So the way he worked was that consciousness, which is nothingness, the unmanifested, formlessness, however you want to, the essence, however you want to represent it, whether you want to call it God, Jehovah, whatever you want to call it. At least I know that the scientists, they now call it the matrix, the divine matrix. Okay, they call it the matrix, basically the holy. Some call it the holy matrix. They have seen, they have observed it. Okay, through the study of atoms and particles. That's there was an experiment that is popular. Okay, that observed it. What was that experiment? That particles are just there, but when you start observing them, they start taking form that is in harmony with your observation. That's what's forgotten the name of that experiment now, but it's something I know I've mentioned here before, but I don't remember it now. Okay, so whatever you want to call it, it is that consciousness that is in all of the forms and is not separate from it. It took that form and is experiencing all of the things happening with that form. Okay, so this is the phenomenon, how the form matter came into being. There was first consciousness. Consciousness then imagined to be Abuchi. It became Abuchi. This same phenomenon that brought in the world of the form, that brought in the expression that includes me, the animals, the trees, and all things, is the same phenomenon, the same process that you can then use to create the different experiences, also the expressions in your own physical world. How? Through your imagination. Okay? You imagine things. In fact, everything that you have been experiencing in your physical world, you have been giving life to it. You have been imagining it. Okay? So let me take you to the Bible verses that captures these claims. So if you go to Romans 4:17, it says, God. So you've now agreed with me, based on all of this teaching, that you are God. According to Psalms 86, you are what? God. At the same time, you are the sons of the Most High. That's the God as well. Okay? So it means in this form, you are a son. In this form as well, that son is, according to John 10:30, that son and the Father are one. So that's simply saying, in as much as everything is different, man is different from tree is different, man is different from woman, the man, physical man is different from the physical woman, man is different from stone is different from tree is different from animals. All of them are of the same essence. That's why there is only God. Because everything, in as much as they are different, they are from the same essence. Now, the only difference is that God has taken this form. In this form, there is a difference. And what is that difference? And there is only one difference in this form. Okay? In this form, this form is conditioned with time and space. That's why, if you imagine, as far as you're in this form, when you imagine things, it will take the condition of time before it appeared. So this is a time framed form. But in the form, which is our true self, which is that unconditioned awareness of being before this conditioned state, is instant when imagination happens. Is what is instant. So that's why our primary purpose here is to be in this form and express the higher form. We need to get to the point where that's our primary purpose. Okay, you need to get to the point where you imagine something and it will not be conditioned on time. That's the difference between God form and man form. But God form is everything. Is everything. I and my Father are one. Is everything. But because you're already conditioned in this time and space, God has taken this for let's create man in our own image, in our imagination. So it is true imagination. So there is God, there is imagination, and then there is expression, which can be man, animal, tree, whatever matter it is. That's why in that Genesis 1:24, it says, let's make man in our image, after our likeness. So what that image is through our imaginative power. So God, there is God, which is consciousness. Consciousness took this form, took your form through that power that Paul described as the wisdom and power of God. It was through that wisdom, through that power that it took, he was able to take this form and take every other form, the form of stone, the form of tree, and all other forms. Now it has taken this form, low-keyed. Before it took this form, it was high-keyed. So when it took this form, it became low-keyed. That low-keyed form, which is this God in man form, okay? Because you are still God, but now in this low-keyed form, in the opaque, the form of opacity, light can pass through you. Okay? This low-keyed form is what was represented in the Bible as Adonai. So Adonai is low-keyed God. That is the second after you are God, which is the high-keyed. The second, you are sons, is referring to Adonai. When you hear Adonai, it is man, but it is God, but in low-keyed form, which is man, which is tree, which is animal, which is all expression. That's the Adonai of your Bible, low-keyed God. The way the high-keyed God or consciousness, pure consciousness got to expression was through the creative activity. That creative activity is imagination. That's why in Genesis 1:27, it said, let's create the creative activity. Let's create man in our image. That is, let's imagine man. And it is through that form consciousness came into this conditioned state. That is called man, that is called stone, that is called tree, that is called animal. Okay. Now, in going back, it will also go back through that same imagination. Because the whole of this story is God incarnated as man, and man is to incarnate God back as God. That is the birth of Christ in the Bible. The birth of Christ wasn't any human being that lived in time and space just like we're living now. So that's birth of Christ. In incarnating as man, he was born under through woman's reproductive system. In incarnating back, going back, the realization as God will happen up from above. So the summary of the story is that God became man so that man can become God. So what process did God, through which process? Through imagination. Let's make man in our image. Imagination was the process. It was low-keyed. We became this Adonai form. Low-keyed God. That imagination through which he became this low-keyed God, because we are God, we are still with it. But it was buried. Because it was buried, that's why when we imagine, it will take time. It will happen in time. But the moment we awaken, the moment Christ resurrects, Christ was crucified in us. We are the cross that Christ was crucified in. Let me show you the cross. Is this not the cross? That's the cross. We are the cross Christ was crucified in, and he would awaken in us. He will be bettered in us. That's the virgin birth. The virgin birth wasn't a physical virgin that took, somehow, I don't know how a virgin could have gotten pregnant, okay? So Christ will awaken in us. So that awakening, when Christ awakens in us, because there is only God, everything is God. In this form, yes, in this low-keyed form, we would become God, but in this low-keyed form. Like, we would become that original form, even in this low-keyed form. That's the awakening. That's enlightenment. That's the peak of spirituality. Okay? So, but what is why does this whole story that I'm telling, okay, you're probably hearing for the first time, it's probably complex to you, you don't understand it. What does it all mean to me? What benefit does it bring to me? The benefit it brings to you is that same imagination, that creative power, which is imagination, that consciousness used in coming low key, is that you as God, you're with it. That's what you use in coming into this form. So it's still there. Okay, that consciousness is what you are also using to currently create your physical world experiences and all the circumstances and the people within your physical world experiences. And imagination is your thoughts and feeling and the associated image. That's how you came. It is through it that you came. And it is through it you begin to create, you're already using it to create different life experiences, but you are not aware that it is it that is responsible for, but because the mainstream Christendom teaching is based on the surface literal teaching of the Bible, you don't know this deeper esoteric teachings and how you can apply it. So you don't know that it is your imagination, which is the wisdom and power of you that is God, according to Paul, that you can then begin to create. Even in this low-keyed form, you can still, the only difference is, one, if you use it here, it will happen in time. But before you came to this form, it was happening instantly. But if you use it here, it will happen in time. It will take time before it happens. but it is still your creative power. It is that faculty that helps you go into the unseen and have a certain inner experience that must materialize itself in this world. It is biblically, scripturally backed. Let's go to, I want to take that particular one, okay, quickly, because there are other verses, but this is, let's go to Ephesians 3:20. What does it say? It say, now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. Is referring to something. According to the power that works in us. The power that works in us is imagination energized as faith. So that imagination is actually faith because it's the word, it's the logos. Okay, logos is what define imagination. That's the son. He's the son, the logos. You know, it was with him from the beginning before we took this form. Okay, because it was that faculty, that capability that helped it took this form. Okay, so if you read all of those John 1:3 and all of those things, it was with him from the beginning. Okay, and then it became, and it became man. Now here is where confusion comes. Why people don't know that they are the God of the Bible is let's read that. What's the time? Oh, I've far short my time. Okay, I'm concluding now because we are now at how you can use that same power. Okay, that power of the old. It is that power of the old, that power that was there before even you took this form. That's the power of the old. Okay, John 1:1. John 1:1, what does it say? It says, I'm now rushing into that. It says, in the beginning was the word. That word is imagination. Your thinking and your feeling. Your inner talking is your thoughts. Your inner wishes is the word. Is that faculty that enables you with those inner wishes and all of those inner thoughts. So in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God. In the beginning, okay? In the beginning, that is when you go to Genesis, and the word was God. Okay, so at every point in time, it's not separating. That's why in John 10:30 it says, I and my Father are one. At every point in time, it's never polarizing, it's never separating any. That's why I told you that consciousness is the essence, and the essence is what took all the different form of matter. Okay, so in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was what? Was God. Now, if you go to the 2, then he was with God in the beginning. Clearly, the word was with God. So there are 2 things here. So the first is I am. Okay, now there is something in between I am. So before I am can become that I am, that there's something in between. That is that word. That is your wonderful human imagination, which is your thoughts plus feelings and its associated images. So through him, remember, through him, all things were made. It was through this imagination that everything in your life was made. Good, bad, ugly. It's through it. Without him, nothing was made. That was what? That was made. In him was life. And that life was the light of mankind. It shines. The light shines, excuse me. The light shines in darkness, and darkness has not overcome it. Okay, now let's go to 14. That's where we really need to be. 14. And that word, and the word became flesh. The word now became matter, now took form, okay, and made his dwelling. Now, all this translation use among us. All this translation, they all use and made his dwelling among us. That among us was a wrong, among was wrong translation, because the Greek word that was translated among, the correct translation it should be, that Greek word is Eve. E, recom then V. So Eve, that word, the correct translation is not among, is within. So what is supposed to be in John 1:14 is the word became flesh and made his dwelling within us. That's why if you go to Corinthians, Colossians, if you go to Colossians, I'm rounding off because this is the last bit, because you need to know how you can begin to use this power, which is this creative power that is your imagination. That's what was personified in the Bible as Christ. There's no man that ever lived in this world, just like we're living, that was Christ. So in Colossians 1:27, it said, to them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you. So what was supposed to be in John 1:14 is not among, because among made it lose the esoteric meaning, the meaning that is the original meaning, that refers to an activity, a psychological activity that is taking place inside your consciousness. Okay. So, but the people who translated it and put among with Eve is supposed to go and ask anybody who is from Greece or study Greek. Okay. That Eve is supposed to be within, not Eve. Okay. So they use that among, and that among is because they understood the teachings of the Bible from exoteric. So in order to align with that, their exoteric understanding, they use among where they were supposed to use to. So in order for their interpretations to align with their exoteric teaching, the literal surface teaching, they went and used among and removed the normal meaning of that Eve that is supposed to be within. So that word, which is the same thing, which is the same, if you go to John 1:1, is the word and God are one. Okay, even John 10:30 buttressed it. Okay, that word lived among us, and that's what lived within us, not among. So know that correction today. You can go and research it so that you know it was a wrong translation here. So that's what. So when they said, when in Genesis it said, let's make man in our image and likeness, that's, you now know it is true, making man through imagination. In Exodus 1:27. Okay, so what I'm saying in essence is, it was through this power and wisdom, which is your imagination, that you came, that consciousness took this form, this expression called Abuchi, called whatever is your name. It is through this phenomenon, this creative activity, that you have been shaping all your physical world experiences through your thoughts and your feelings. Okay? Now, what happens? How does this happen? Anytime you think and focus that thought in one direction, that's constantly thinking it. Focusing thought in one direction is to constantly thinking of that thing, thinking of it, or thinking from it. Okay? To constantly thinking from it. And you fuse it with feeling. That thing must appear in your physical world. All the things that have appeared in your physical world, it was through this phenomenon. Like I always say, even a mistaken drop of pin from your hand, you created it. Nobody. Stop blaming your employer for your life circumstances. Stop blaming your employee for your life circumstances. Stop blaming your neighbors. Stop blaming your uncle in the village. Stop blaming anybody outside of yourself. You are the architect of your own life. You have been the one creating all your life conditions, both the pleasant one and the unpleasant one. You are the God, okay? Molding. You are the potter. So the way it is that the clay is the thought. Clay is the thought, okay? Your feeling is your ability to mold it into a shape. Okay? That is what the form you have always created. That's how you have been molding all your life experiences, both the good, the bad, the pleasant, the unpleasant one, the fortunes and the misfortunes. Everything that have come into your life, you are God creating your life experiences. But because it's timed, you may have forgotten what you have done. That's why in Philippians 4 verse 8, it says what? Think of those things that are what? Enabling. Apart from even Philippians, look at what he said here. Let's go to there's a particular verse that clearly the Bible verse that says, guide your heart, for out of it guide your heart. That's Proverbs 4:23. It says, above all else, above every other thing, guide your heart, for everything do flow from it. Your heart, it meant here, is your thoughts and your feelings. Because whenever they fuse, the fusion of your thought and your feelings is the heart referred here, because that's what creates all your life experiences. Okay. From it flow springs of life. That's Berean standard. It classifies it as, it interprets it as, from it flows the spring of life. King James Version says, for out of it are the issues of life. So what are you thinking now? What are you feeling? That is your creative power as God. That's your wisdom and power of God. That's your creative power, okay? Your thoughts and your feelings are what? Because the kingdom of God is within you, and your thoughts and your feelings are the substance of the things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Okay, you will see it in your. That's why in Romans, what does it say in Romans here? It says, calling things not seen as though they are seen. Okay, so those thoughts and feelings that are intense, those inner groanings toward, inner groanings. Where is that? Acts 17:28 refers to it. In him, your thoughts and feeling live and move, and that's where we have our being. Okay, your assumptions, what you accept to be true of yourself, that's your thoughts and feeling. Romans 4:17 refers to it as God who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not which do not exist as though they were, which do not exist as though they were. When you're thinking and feeling, you're calling those things that do not exist as though you're having an inner experience that must materialize in your physical world. That's that imaginative power, the power of your imagination. That's what was personified in the Bible as Christ. Okay. If you go to okay, I've read all of these sites. Romans 4:7. Okay, gifts. I've read that as well. So Genesis 11, this is another important one that refers to your imagination as a creator, the creative power creating your life. That's your wisdom and your power as God. In Genesis 11:6, it says, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined. There's nothing you imagine, you think and feel intensely that will not, that's inner. The moment you're thinking and feeling something intensely, you're having an inner experience. That's your creative power as God. That it will appear in your physical world. Okay. I've read that Romans, calling things not seen as though they were seen. That's what your imagination does. That's what inner experience. Okay. If you go to 2 Corinthians 4:18, it says, we look not at the things which are seen. Okay. But we look not at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal. I told you your physical world is ephemeral, it's fleeting, they are temporal. But the things which are not seen are eternal. Okay, they are eternal. So to look at the unseen is where you're imagining. Okay, now if you go to Hebrew 11, remember imagination is faith. If you go to Hebrew 11:1, it says, now faith in the substance of the things hoped for. So those things that you're not seeing, okay, but evidence of things not seen. That's okay. So your imagination is the key that have been opening all doors in your life, and your imagination is your thinking plus feeling loop. That's how you got here in the first place. That's how you low-keyed. You're the God, you low-keyed here. Okay, that's how you also ascend back to your status as God. Now, the difference between God, the high-keyed God and the low-key God, which you are, is the high-key one. When he imagines, it happens instantly. Okay, that's why if you go to Genesis, okay, it said, "Let there be light," and there was light. It was instant. Okay, that's the point. That's your purpose. You need to get back to your God self. You need to realize back that you're God. You need to remove that veil. And the way to remove that veil is to begin to use that your image, become conscious of, conscious creating rather than unconscious creating. Become aware that you are the one, no one else. No matter what your pastors tell you, it is your imagination. Just like that imagination is creating their physical world experiences. It's the same thing that is taking place in you. Okay? That your imagination is what was personified in the Bible as Christ. I've shown you the different Bible verses that refer to it. Anything you imagined must happen. And imagination is speaking to your thoughts and feelings, plus the associated images. When you think and you feel, you see the picture, you have an inner experience. The moment you continue to focus on that thoughts and feelings, you can think. If feeling is not fused to it, it just goes. It doesn't create anything. The creative power actually happens when thought fuses with feeling. It produces an inner experience. Once that happens, you must experience it in your physical world. You must. No going back. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it doesn't matter. Okay? Now, you need to start washing your thoughts and feelings. Make sure, according to what we're advised in Hebrew, okay, Hebrew 4:8, make sure that you think of those things that are ennobling, those things that are of praiseworthy. If anything be praiseworthy, be trustworthy, be excellent, be ennobling. Think of those things. That's what they were trying to teach you. Because as a man thinketh in his heart means as a man, if a man fuses thoughts with feeling, then in Romans, he said, it's out of it that are the issues of life. So what are you thinking right now? Those thoughts and feelings you are holding in your consciousness, if they appear in your physical world, is this something you'll be happy about? Is this something you will lovingly enjoy? So think of those things that are ennobling. Because as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. Because it's out of the heart that all of the issues of life springs forth from. Thank you for listening. I hope you have learned something today. I hope you will join us next, in our next class. And I also hope you will continue to join us, in our next class. I also hope you will share. If you have any question regarding our teaching today, please drop it in the comment section and we will answer you. Okay. Please be respectful. Okay. Be very respectful, but it's okay if you're not respectful. I know this teaching challenges all the things you have known in your life, okay? But just test it, just like Paul test. Do you not know that Christ is in you and Christ is the hope of glory? Christ is your what? Your wonderful human imagination. Okay, so join us next Sunday. Please share this for people that would need it. Then the final parting word. How do you think correctly? How do you feel correctly? Any wish you have, any dream you have, anything you have, you want to experience in your physical world. I always say it, use the principle of revision. The moment there is a need, it's an indication of lack. That need is actually lack. So what do? Flip that lack that you call need. Flip it to abundance. So how do you do that? In your imagination, have the inner experience of abundance, of your wish fulfilled. How do you do that? You want a new car now, right? That's the need. It means the reason why you want this is because it's not there. It is lacking. Put it there. In your imagination, put it there. Feel as though you already have it. And in time, it will materialize in your physical world. Wait for it. It will not be late. It never gets late. Okay? Wait. It never gets late. Habakkuk 2:3. For what? For the vision is for the future time. I told you the difference between your true God self, which is your consciousness, and your current Adonai, your kid God self, is one imagines and it happens instantly. Let there be light, and there was light. That's when you're your glow in your true God self. Okay. Now the other one, the vision is the image. It will take time. So it says, for the revelation I wait an appointed time. Another translation used, this vision is for the future time. It describes the end. So the end is when you flip. So if you have a need for a car, it means the car is not there. What is the end? The end is what? When the car is already there. That's the end. Then you no longer have the need. If it has already happened, that's the end. You no longer have the need. So that's lack, which you call need, flip it, put the car there in your imagination. Because what? Ends, goes through to origin. Okay? So your end in the imagination is your origin in your physical world. Okay? That's why he said in this Habakkuk 2:3, say, for the vision is for the future. It describes the end and it will be fulfilled. If it seems slow in coming, wait patiently, for it will surely take place. It will not be delayed. Do you understand? If you go to Habakkuk, Habakkuk 2:2, he said, the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablet so that it be herald may run with it. Make it plain. Make it plain. That's flip it. Have that inner experience. Fuse your thoughts with feeling. It forms an image. That's the vision. It will be replicated in your physical world. So take this, test it, and see if it works or not. Thank you for listening. See you next week, Sunday. Do have a pleasant day. Bye.